So Celebrate Recovery has, as I said earlier, 25 lessons that we do every other week throughout the year. So if you're new, tonight we're on lesson 13. Don't panic, right, that you weren't here for the first 12. We'll circle back around. But there will be things tonight that you'll hear that you'll be able to use in your own journey, even right now. But also don't feel like you got to rush home and do everything I say tonight, because that would be overwhelming. We don't want you to do that. Mostly we just want you to listen and kind of get some of the farther away ideas. Don't worry about honing in on the details so much. So we're in principle 4, which says, openly examine and confess my hurts, hang-ups, and habits to myself, to God, and to someone I trust. And the biblical comparison for that is found in Matthew 5:8. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our hurts, hang-ups, and habits. Thank you, guys. I appreciate that. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. James 5:16. And we're going to focus a bit here in a few minutes on this healing element, because we all want to have some healing in our lives, right? That's why we're here. So tonight we're going to focus mostly on, we talked in our last lesson 2 weeks ago about confessing. This time we're going to dig into that a little more. This portion is called admitting. And always at this point in the recovery journey, people always ask me, well, why do I got to do that? Why do I need to admit my wrongs? I already talked to God about it. Why do I need to talk to another person about it? I don't want to do that. Well, we're gonna unpack some of the reasons why that might be important, because it is important. For most of us, by the time we got to recovery, we were carrying a whole bunch of secrets. We've been telling a whole bunch of lies by the time we got here. And every day that we carry those secrets or we carry those lies, it's taking an emotional toll. In some cases, it's causing us physical pain, and it keeps us in bondage to whatever those habits are that we've been struggling with. But admitting out loud those secrets to someone else strips them of their power. It helps break the chains that they have on us. Still, right, we can be afraid. We can be afraid to do that, and that's okay. But the people that are here, that are on this journey of recovery with you, they're people that you can trust. They're people that have done this, who understand what it's like to be open and honest and vulnerable, and they'll know how to listen well and how to not judge you and how to be encouraging as you go through this process. So do you know what it is we have to lose by telling someone else? I heard something somewhere. What did somebody say? Now they're being quiet. Shame? Okay, well, how about instead of keeping it a secret, I'll tell you. So we're going to lose all kinds of things we want to lose. So the first thing that we're going to lose is we're going to lose our sense of isolation. Anybody feel isolated? Right? Especially if you're in active addiction, or if you're new in recovery, it's easy to feel isolated. I remember I could be in a room full of people and feel like I was the only one like me. Nobody else could possibly be as bad as me. Nobody else would want to know me if they knew who I really was. But that's the beauty of recovery, is there's always going to be somebody who's willing to walk alongside you, and that sense of aloneness is going to start to dissipate over time, especially as we become willing to open up and share with others. We'll begin to lose our unwillingness to forgive. We'll begin to lose our unwillingness to forgive as we share the things that we're admitting to our sponsors, our accountability partners, and we find the acceptance and the love that they have for us. We'll start to see that we can forgive other people. Now, in future lessons, I'll talk a little bit about how forgiveness does not equal trust, right? I'm not suggesting that you run right home and forgive everyone who's ever hurt you and let them right back into your life. No, don't do that, please. That would not be good. I am suggesting, though, that we can become willing to forgive people, and forgiveness is a process that happens over time. But forgiveness does not mean trust. Number 3, we'll lose our sense of inflated, false pride. The founder of Celebrate Recovery, John Baker, he talks about how when he first got into recovery, how he recognized that most of his life he had been an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I read those words and I was like, no, I don't want to have to say that. And I'm not saying that's true for you, but that was true for me. I was an egomaniac who acted big, talked big, but inside, I felt completely worthless, completely useless. So we get to lose our inflated false pride. And the other thing we get to lose is our sense of denial. Our sense of denial. The beautiful thing about being truthful is as we do it, it becomes easier to continue to be truthful all the time. And as we practice honesty, denial starts to fade away. I was having a conversation with somebody a little bit earlier where they were talking about how they tried to encourage someone else that, hey, you're going to get caught doing that. You should stop doing that. And I remember living just that way, always in fear of, I'm going to get caught. When am I going to get caught, and how bad is it going to be? And the beautiful thing that happens is once we start to be open and honest and admit the things that we're struggling with, we don't have to be afraid of being caught anymore because we're being honest and we're not living in denial. Okay, so those are 4 of the things that we lose when we admit that we don't have it all together, that we have some challenges that we're facing. Now let's talk about some stuff that we're going to gain. And the stuff that we're going to gain is actually quite incredible. The first thing that we're going to gain is we're going to gain the healing that the Bible promises. We're going to gain the healing that the Bible promises. So a couple of minutes ago, we read this verse, which says, "Therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed." So the key word here is healed, right? So when we confess to God, we're immediately forgiven. But when we confess to someone else, we're able to start engaging in the healing process. And let me just tell you that it's really odd how this works. So for example, when I was in a step study in my 3rd year of recovery, I reached out to my daughter, my grown daughter, and I apologized to her. I confessed to her all the ways I'd been a terrible father. I admitted to her that I felt terrible for what I had done, and I asked for her to forgive me. And she said, hell no. I'm not going to forgive you. If I forgive you, then that gives you the power to hurt me again, right? That was her thinking. I'm not going to forgive you. And I was amazed that even though she didn't forgive me, I still started to feel the healing that admitting and confessing did for me. As much as I would like for that relationship to have been restored then, I still experienced healing because I did my part in honoring God's promise in His Word. God always forgives us, but sometimes people can't. And that's going to be okay. You still can find freedom. The second thing that we gain is freedom. Freedom. As we talked about a moment ago, our secrets have kept us in chains, bound, frozen, unable to move forward in our relationship with God and in our relationships with other people. You know what that's like, right? When you're trying to be in a relationship with somebody, but you're also having to spend a super large amount of time trying to remember what lies you told, trying to have them believe something about you that's not really true. Because if they actually knew the real you, they probably wouldn't like you anyway. So it's better to risk the lie. Well, that's all distorted thinking. And when we are honest, and when we reach out to God and we are honest with other people, that's when our healing can start. The psalmist had this experience himself. In Psalm 107, it says this, "Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them from their distress. He brought them out of darkness, the utter darkness, and he broke away their chains." This was not only true then, it's true now. Jesus will save you from whatever distress that you're in. He will bring you out of darkness, even if that darkness is utter darkness. As we confess to him, as we admit to him, we find freedom from the darkness and we walk into his light. Unconfessed sin, though, is kind of like a cancer. It will fester. The psalmist goes on to say here in Psalm 32, "When I kept silent, my bones wasted away through my groaning all day long. For day and night my strength was sapped as in the heat of summer." Trying to live in denial, trying to hold on to all of those secret sins just will suck all of the life right out of you. It won't leave you any energy to do anything else. Anybody ever had that happen? Yeah. Praise God that we can be free of that as we walk in our recovery. Openness is to wholeness as secrets are to sickness. The idea here is we talk all the time about how you are only as sick as your secrets. Well, the reverse of that is you are only as whole as you are open. Whatever we hold back from God, whatever we don't give to him, continues to keep us sick. We don't ever stay in one place. We're always moving one direction or the other. So we're either moving into more wholeness or we're moving back to sickness, one or the other. The beautiful thing is we get to choose which it is. The third thing that we gain is we gain support from each other. I remember my poor sponsor, that poor guy. He's an amazing man of God. But that poor guy, when I did my first inventory with him, I thought for sure that would be it. He would be done with me. He would never talk to me again. And most probably he would tell everyone at Celebrate Recovery, stay away from that guy. He's really sick. But that's not what happened. When I shared my stuff with him, when I shared my inventory with him, he was encouraging and supporting. He actually said at one point, he was like, "You're being kind of hard on yourself here," right? He helped me be more balanced in the way I looked at my past. He helped me have a different perspective, right? Sometimes our old friend denial can surface and we'll start listing off all those excuses that we used to use, right? Some of these are mine, right? "Oh, it really wasn't that bad." Right? Anybody ever say that? I remember when I used to say, "Well, I'm not doing the really hard drugs," or "I'm not shooting up anymore." You know, whatever it might be. It's not that bad. Or one of my favorites was, "You started it. You deserved it because you started it." Yeah, that doesn't work in recovery anymore. Or another one I was really good at is, "It really wasn't my fault." I was good at blaming all of you, right? It wasn't my fault. Or sometimes I'd be on the other extreme. "I'm a horrible human and it's impossible for me to do anything right." So my sponsor was really helpful in encouraging me, helping me have a different perspective, and helping me be balanced as I worked through this inventory process. So it's really important that you not try to do Principle 4 or Step 5 by yourself, that you have someone on your journey with you who has already done it before. Well, how do I find someone like that, you say? How would I choose someone? Well, one of the ways would be you would come here on Monday nights, you would go to City First on Tuesday nights, you'd go to Grace Fellowship on Friday nights, you'd try the other meetings until you met someone who you connected with, who you related to. The best place that you're going to be able to do that is in the small groups, which happen after this. It's going to be important, though, that it's somebody that you can relate to, so choose carefully, right? And make sure it's someone who has already done this themselves, because otherwise they might, unintentionally say something dumb like, "You did what?" You don't want to hear that, right? Or, "Yeah, you shouldn't have done that. That was bad." That's not good either. So you don't need a judge and jury when you're in this part of your recovery. What you need is an encourager, a supporter, because God has already determined the verdict. Because of Jesus, we've been declared not guilty. Because of Jesus, we get to be forgiven and purified of all of our sin. This process is not to make us feel worse. This process is to free us from the past and leave it where it belongs, which is in the past. So make sure that you choose someone who has already done this themselves. You got to choose somebody who is of the same gender that you trust and respect, right? So men with men, ladies with ladies. I probably don't need to go into greater detail on that. Second, you want to ask someone, you could ask the person if they have completed Principle 4, Step 5, but most importantly, even have they done a step study, an entire step study, right? Because then they will have completed the 8 principles and the 12 steps, and they will know how to relate to you in a non-judgmental way. You could ask one of the leaders of this group, "Hey, who's somebody that you know and trust that might be a good fit for me? Somebody who has a sense of empathy, who has a healthy recovery," because we want to do this with healthy people, because that's what we want, is to be healthy. Then you're going to set an appointment with the person, an appointment where you're going to have a time with no interruptions, right? You're not going to have your phones in the room with you. You're going to have them somewhere else. You're not going to have the TV on. You're going to preferably have the kids somewhere else with someone else watching them. You want to plan to be able to spend at least 2 hours together as you share the work that you've journaled, as you share with them what you've done. Now, I've heard stories, right, of people taking a whole weekend. I know on my first inventory, it was 50 years of stuff, and it took 5 hours, and that was probably too long. You really want to just try to keep it to about 2 hours, maybe 3. If it's more than that, it could wind up being counterproductive. And what are some guidelines you want to think about for that meeting? Well, first, as with all of recovery, you want to start with prayer. You want to invite God into the process. You want to ask for things like courage and humility and honesty, especially courage, because it takes courage to be humble. It takes courage to be honest. It takes courage to be vulnerable. But God has courage in great abundance, and he will give it to you if you ask for it. If you have a phone, you might want to take a picture of these verses, because I'm not planning to read them all off to you. But when you get into a step study and you get into Principle 4, there will be a section of verses that will help you through this process. These verses are very important to encourage and support you as you're on this journey of discovery and admission and confession. You definitely want to keep things balanced, right? You want to look at what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? I encourage people, the guys that I work with, is to do 1 for 1, right? For each challenge that you list, or each weakness or shortcoming that you list 1 strength or 1 positive thing. Because the idea of this isn't to circle and spiral down into a deep, dark hole that you get lost in. The idea is to just gain an understanding of who you really are and the decisions that you've made that have gotten you to the place you are now, so you could keep the good ones moving forward and release the ones that aren't so good and not repeat them again and again. And then just like you started, you want to end. You want to end your time together in prayer. You want to thank God, right, for what he's done, for this opportunity to be in this recovery journey, for whoever the person is that you've just spent this time with. I remember when I went into the inventory, right, being, as I said, terrified, and I thought for sure, that this guy was not going to want to know me or be associated with me afterwards. It turned out, though, that after we spent that time together, our friendship deepened. Our ability to trust each other deepened. And that was 6 years ago, right, that I did that with him, and he's still my sponsor today, 6 years later. And we have a relationship that is one of complete trust. I could tell him anything, and I know that he would love me and accept me, but be honest with me at the same time. God has somebody in mind for you to have a relationship with you just like that. Someone that you can count on, someone that will encourage you and support you through this challenging process of Principle 4 and Step 5.